For decades, John Alderton and Pauline Collins were the very definition of British grace, the timeless couple who seemed to have it all. On-screen chemistry, off-screen devotion, and a love story that outlasted Hollywood's cruel clock. But now, after John's heartbreaking death, everything we thought we knew about their perfect life is being questioned. Because in the quiet that followed his passing, something unexpected surfaced: letters, recordings, and testimonies that tell a very different story. A story Pauline never wanted the world to hear. For years, she was seen as the devoted wife, the gentle star who stood by John through every triumph and tragedy. But behind that charming smile and award-winning career, John's closest friends claimed there were secrets that weighed on him until his final days. Those who knew them privately describe a man torn between love and regret. They say John wanted to protect Pauline's image, but he also wanted the truth to be known. And now, with his voice silenced forever, the truth he left behind is speaking louder than ever. Was Pauline Collins the devoted partner we all admired, or the mastermind behind a carefully crafted illusion? Why did John, just months before his death, tell a confidant that some legacies are built on silence? What began as a Hollywood love story is now unraveling into something darker, deeper, and far more human. This is the untold truth of John Alderton and Pauline Collins, the side of their story the cameras never showed. They were the couple everyone wanted to believe in. In a world of fleeting fame and shattered vows, John Alderton and Pauline Collins were the quiet proof that love could survive the spotlight. Their story began in the early 1970s, when two rising stars found each other, not in some glamorous Hollywood party, but on the set of a small British drama. From the moment John met Pauline, there was something undeniable: an ease, a spark that felt both cinematic and real. Those who worked with them said their chemistry wasn't just acting. It was destiny. John was already known for his charm, that warm smile that made every role believable. Pauline, graceful yet fierce, had a presence that drew people in without trying. Together, they became a symbol of balance, two souls who made ambition look effortless and marriage look eternal. When they finally married, it felt like a fairy tale come to life. The industry called them the golden pair, the rare couple who proved that love could endure even under the cruel glare of fame. Red carpets, magazine covers, interviews everywhere they went, they radiated warmth and unity. Fans adored them because they weren't loud or scandalous. They were elegant, normal, real. John once said in an interview, "If you're lucky enough to find your person, the rest of the world can disappear." It became one of the most quoted lines of his career, a romantic mantra that defined them for decades. To the outside world, John and Pauline were untouchable, a timeless romance untouched by betrayal, jealousy, or fame's poison. They seemed to have cracked the code of celebrity love, living proof that fairy tales still existed. But behind every perfect illusion lies the truth no one dares to tell. Behind the smiles and red carpet glances, small fractures had already begun to form. Fame, as gentle as it looked on them, has a way of testing even the strongest bonds, and John and Pauline were no exception. It started subtly. Long hours apart, endless shoots, competing schedules that kept them on opposite sides of the world. Pauline's star was rising rapidly: award nominations, leading roles, interviews that painted her as Britain's sweetheart. John, proud but quietly overshadowed, often joked that he was now Mr. Collins. But behind the humor, there was pain. Friends recall moments when John would retreat into silence, nursing a drink a little longer than usual, speaking of how success can feel lonelier than failure. Pauline, ever the professional, would reassure him she believed in him, stood by him, but she was also driven, chasing the momentum her career demanded. Then came the jealousy, not loud or dramatic, but quiet and sharp. Pauline's co-stars, the romantic scripts, the constant praise, they all gnawed at John's confidence. Meanwhile, Pauline grew weary of always being the caretaker, the steady one holding it together while he wrestled with his insecurities. Yet through it all, they stayed. Pauline refused to walk away, saying, "You don't abandon someone you love just because the light dims." She carried him through the roughest storms, sacrificing her own peace to protect the man the world saw as unbreakable. Still, those cracks, the ones hidden from cameras and fans, kept spreading. What began as love built on partnership was slowly turning into love built on endurance, and deep down both knew something had begun to change forever. In public, they were perfection. In private, they were strangers. Every smile was practiced. Every word rehearsed love turned into performance. By the late years of their marriage, John and Pauline had become experts at pretending. Red carpets, award shows, talk show interviews, they knew exactly how to play the roles the world expected. They laughed at the same moments, exchanged tender glances, and finished each other's sentences like a well-rehearsed script. To fans, it looked effortless. To those who knew them, it looked exhausting. On one red carpet, John gently kissed Pauline's hand as the cameras flashed. The photo went viral. Tabloids called it proof that real love still exists. But a friend who stood nearby later said that moments before, they hadn't spoken a single word to each other in the car. Pauline looked out the window. John scrolled through his phone. Silence was their new language. In interviews, Pauline often described their bond as unbreakable. John would nod, smiling faintly, but his eyes gave him away, distant, heavy, searching for the feeling he used to know. At home, conversations turned to schedules and obligations. The laughter that once filled their evenings had become polite noise. They still showed up for each other birthdays, premieres, public events, but not out of joy. Out of duty. They weren't husband and wife anymore. They were brand ambassadors for a love story long gone. Every public appearance became a scene, every touch a cue, and every compliment a lie they told together to keep the illusion alive. Because admitting the truth that the magic had faded would have broken not just their marriage, but the legend they'd spent a lifetime building. By the early 2020s, the distance was impossible to hide. What began as a quiet drift had become an unbridgeable gap. John and Pauline were still together in name, but not in spirit. Their conversations had turned into formalities, their laughter into echoes of a time they both pretended to remember. Then one day everything ended not with a scandal or a fight, but with silence. John stopped coming home. He moved into a small cottage near the coast, telling friends he needed time to think. Pauline didn't stop him. She told the press he was working on a private project, but those close to her said she cried every night, staring at the chair he used to sit in. It was during that separation that Pauline reportedly discovered something, a letter John had written months earlier, but never sent. It wasn't cruel nor bitter. It was simply honest. "We built something beautiful," he wrote, but somewhere along the way it stopped being real. That letter became the line that split their story in two, the love that was, and the truth that followed. Their final public appearance together came shortly before his health began to decline. They stood side by side at an award ceremony, smiling for the cameras. The photo looked warm, timeless, but those who saw it now can't unsee the truth. John's hand barely touched hers. Pauline's smile didn't reach her eyes. When he finally left that world behind, he left her with no dramatic confession, only memories, and a silence that said more than words ever could. The fairy tale was over. All that remained were questions, and a legacy built on heartbreak. In early 2023, the news broke like a quiet storm. Pauline Collins had filed for divorce from John Alderton, citing irreconcilable differences. Two words that the press devoured instantly, but those few words hid nearly 50 years of loyalty, heartbreak, and silent endurance. To the public, it seemed sudden. To those who knew them, it was inevitable. The love that once felt unbreakable had long since become a fragile performance, and neither of them could keep pretending any longer. Pauline released no statement. No interviews, no tears for the cameras. She chose silence, a silence that said everything. Dignified, controlled, heartbroken. Meanwhile, John, frail but defiant, broke his quiet with a single interview that stunned everyone. Sometimes, he said softly, the person you love most is the one you have to let go of because love stops being kind. That sentence made headlines. Fans divided overnight, some blaming her for abandoning him, others defending her right to peace after years of emotional struggle. Inside court documents, the details were brief, no fights over money, no property battles, just two people quietly unraveling a lifetime of memories. But beneath the legal simplicity was decades of exhaustion, emotional distance, unspoken resentment, and a deep ache that neither could mend. Their final public moments were heartbreakingly polite. No bitterness. No accusations. Just two souls who once promised forever, walking away with what little strength they had left. For the world, their divorce marked the end of a love story. For John and Pauline, it was something deeper, the quiet realization that sometimes even the truest love can't survive the weight of its own legend. After the divorce, the truth began to seep through the cracks they had spent a lifetime sealing. And when John passed away, it all came pouring out quietly, heartbreakingly, piece by piece. In the months after his death, friends close to John shared fragments of his final reflections, private letters, diary notes, and voice recordings he had kept hidden. They painted a portrait of a man torn between love and sorrow. One note simply read, "I never stopped loving her. I just stopped recognizing who we became." It was both confession and closure. For Pauline, the aftermath was devastating. She retreated completely from the public eye, turning down interviews and disappearing from red carpets. Her silence was louder than any denial could have been. But when she finally spoke in a quiet radio interview nearly a year later, her words broke hearts across the nation. "We lived a full story," she said softly. "Not perfect, not easy, but ours." Fans were divided. Some mourned the end of a fairy tale they had believed in for decades. Others felt relief that the truth had finally surfaced, that even those who seem perfect carry invisible pain. Rumors briefly swirled of a new woman. In John's final years, a quiet companion from his theater days, though nothing was ever confirmed. Pauline never addressed it, and perhaps she didn't need to. The truth was already heavy enough. In the end, what survived wasn't the scandal or the silence, but the honesty that came too late. Their love story, once polished for cameras, became something real at last, flawed, fragile, and profoundly human. Because even after all the secrets were exposed, part of her still loved him. Now Pauline Collins is rebuilding not for fame, not for image, but for peace. For the first time in decades, she's no longer performing a role. She's simply herself again. Those who've seen her in recent years describe a woman changed quieter, gentler, but somehow lighter. The world remembers her for her grace, her elegance, and her devotion to John. But now she's learning to be remembered for something else, her resilience. She no longer gives interviews about love or loss. Instead, she speaks about acceptance. "You can't rewrite your story," she once told a friend, "but you can learn to read it differently." Those words, simple yet profound, have become her quiet mantra. In her home, she keeps one framed photo of John, not from their glamorous years, but from an ordinary afternoon decades ago. No tuxedo, no gown, no spotlight. Just him, laughing, holding a cup of tea. She says that's how she wants to remember him, not the legend, not the heartbreak, but the man she loved before the world got involved. There's a tenderness in that choice, a peace that comes not from forgetting, but from forgiving. Because in the end, their story wasn't about perfection. It was about endurance, truth, and the courage to let go. John's passing may have closed a chapter, but it also freed Pauline to start a new one, a life defined not by performance, but by authenticity. And maybe that's the lesson hidden within all great love stories. That even when the curtain falls, what remains is the quiet grace of having truly lived. In the end, love doesn't always mean forever sometimes. It simply means letting go with grace. John Alderton once wrote, "The hardest truth is realizing that love can fade and still be real." Those words now echo like a farewell, not bitter, just beautifully human. Pauline Collins has carried that truth quietly. She's not the woman the tabloids once chased. She's the woman who learned that peace is louder than applause and that sometimes survival is its own kind of love story. Their journey from soulmates to strangers, from illusion to truth, reminds us that even the brightest lights cast shadows. But those shadows are where we often find the most honest parts of ourselves. So maybe the real question isn't about what broke them apart, but what kept them holding on for so long. What do you think? Was their love story a tragedy, or simply the price of two people trying to live honestly under fame's cruel spotlight? Let us know in the comments below, and if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Celebrity Data, where every legend has a truth waiting to be told.